Hey, Congressman Joe Sestak joins us. He's a three-star admiral, a Democrat out of Pennsylvania, and senator from Pennsylvania, if he has his way, and is surging in the polls. A great guest of ours, overly qualified judge, if I say that, to talk about all things terror and, I guess, healthcare related. Congressman Sestak, welcome back to Brian and the Judge.
Brian and Judge, great to be aboard again.
Happy New Year to you, Admiral. Before we get to General Jones and Jack Brennan and the crotch bomber, I guess you're pretty happy about what Dick Morris said this morning.
I hadn't heard.
He expects Arlen Specter to join the ranks of Chris Dodd and Byron Dorgan. Take a listen.
And I think my guess is that I don't think Specter is going to run. I think he may retire.
You're kidding.
Senator from Pennsylvania. And not inside info, but that's my guess.
Yeah. Is there anything to that, Congressman Sestak?
I haven't heard, but let me tell you why I haven't heard and why that comment is interesting. I left at 1:15 in the morning, 1:30 in the morning from Philadelphia, outside Philadelphia where I live, the other night. Got in at 8 o'clock in Westmoreland over about 3 inches of snow. Just came out of Johnstown, the center of, I'm in Center County now where they got 4 inches each night. I'm going everywhere to talk to Pennsylvanians, and what I hear is that they are tired of Washington, D.C., where people will do anything for their political survival. And I think Chris Dodd said it best. No one's irreplaceable. Nobody's indispensable. And there comes a moment in time where people of a generation have to step aside and let someone else be in it. And this time, someone's really in for it for people. And I can't tell you why the most gravest harm to America is not this economic recession. It's not the wars overseas. It is not health care. It's a loss of full trust, any trust almost, in those who are in the Senate and elsewhere in the Congress in Washington, D.C. It's a loss of trust in our ideals, and I think that is what that Dick Morris was talking about, why some people should step aside.
As a Navy guy, how much does it irk you that two of the people involved in the coal bombing are still running around in Yemen and have broken out of prison before? There's been 2 massive jailbreaks there. And there were for a while, according to Sunday's terror analyst, Jaron Brennan, we're still going to send people back to Yemen from Gitmo. Does that disturb you?
Here's what disturbs me is, without a question, if we're going to be releasing people, we got to make sure that whoever we release them to, and that was George Bush and others who released them, that they are going to be dealt with appropriately and not just be released. But let me talk to you about Yemen. Yes, am I concerned? When I had my carrier battle group off of Indian Ocean doing retaliatory strikes, I put a cruiser for 4 months, a $1 billion Aegis ship, sitting there with a missile ready to hit an Al-Qaeda that we knew back in 2002, before we released anybody, was sitting there, a high-profile one. And what we finally did after 4 months, because we couldn't get the satellite targeting just right, is a small little unmanned aircraft with a little TV on it, very inexpensive, went in and was able to get him. And really the overarching point is, as you saw on this Detroit issue with that terrorist, we still do not have the right approach to our homeland or defense or anti-terrorism, where knowledge and being able to get information together in often a simplistic way has been brought about successfully. We are still howbound in buying big ships rather than the right type of equipment in this global war.
Well, does the president know what he's doing? Is General Jones up to his job? Is Secretary Napolitano up to her job? Is Secretary Clinton up to hers? Is Jack Brennan up to his?
Every one of them has as the most important constitutional duty the security of America. And I honestly believe this president is, because he made a courageous stand when he said, and I supported it, even though it presents political difficulties, that we need more troops in Afghanistan. After 2.5 years after the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff said, in Iraq we do what we must. In Afghanistan, we do what we can, and Afghanistan spiraled downward. So he is standing up to it. Look, was I pleased with that statement that the system worked? Absolutely not. But I do believe they're out there. But this is just one more time where people have to understand that every day, 7 days a week, they've got to be down there persistently working on this issue. Take Philadelphia Airport. We found out 2 days ago that they've got 3 dogs there sniffing away that are supposed to be bomb-sniffing dogs. And you know what? They were decertified in November, and we're still using them there. The lack of accountability is unacceptable right now, and that's frankly why I'm running against Arlen Specter. He gave a vote for that tragic war in Iraq rather than finishing the job in Afghanistan.
So, Congressman, there's a few things. Number one, am I personally pleased, and a lot of our callers pleased, that he realized we can't bail out on Afghanistan like a lot of liberals want to do and put 30,000 troops in there? Yeah, but when the general asks for 40, between 40 and 80, and he does 35, I think that's a little strange. When he takes 3.5 months and pretends as if it wouldn't have helped to deploy those soldiers quicker, that's a little bit of an insult. And number three, why is he so concerned about emptying Gitmo and pretending as if that's a poster for Al-Qaeda, as if they didn't declare war on us in 1996 before there even was a Gitmo?
Let me make sure I take care of the first 2 points first. The general said about 40,000 is what his real number was.
So give it to him.
And he not only gave him 35, but he also gave him NATO troops that made up for it. And you know what? He wanted it over a year. He's getting them in 6 months. And you know what it is.
President Bush was already ramping up when he was calling it a term.
Say again?
President Bush was ramping up there when, at the end of his term. For a while, as you know, Afghanistan was not going south. For a while, as you know, Afghanistan was fine. In fact, President Bush was running on Afghanistan, and we were looking for a Karzai-like figure in Iraq.
Oh, I'm sorry. I have to totally disagree. I was on the ground, and you know that, early in that conflict. I saw what we were doing. And it was doing it well under President Bush those first couple months. Then I did the retaliatory strikes on my carrier battle group, and I went back on the ground in Afghanistan 18 months later, and I was just aghast at how we had taken those special forces, the psychological operation forces, the civil affairs forces that not only knew how to win, but were going to leave a population, a society behind that would be inhospitable to Al-Qaeda and move them to Iraq. No. I totally disagree. As the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff also said 2.5 years ago, Afghanistan was spiraling downward. And as the head of the CIA said, General Hayden, there's a safe haven now for Al-Qaeda in Pakistan. Now, the thing about Afghanistan is, and why the troops are what they are, is it's not about Afghanistan. We can no longer rebuild that nation as President Bush wanted to do, but failed because we went to Iraq. No, it's about Al-Qaeda in Pakistan. That's the sole reason I supported it. What endangers us? Al-Qaeda. And Pakistan, we have to make sure that they move from south to north Waziristan and don't try to spread their bets again and goes after what endangers them, yes, but more importantly, endangers us.
Congressman, switching gears, when President Obama was running for the White House, and even after he had been elected president and inaugurated, he contended that negotiations for major legislation would not only be done in the public, but would actually be done in the presence of television cameras. Do you support the position of the leadership of the Democrats in the House of Representatives, your party, and the leadership of the Democrats in the Senate to cut up and slice and dice health care legislation behind closed doors, outside the view of the public, with no transparency and without even a normal standard conference committee of senators and representatives doing it together?
I've already been on record that's saying, let's take one example, that as the Senate did its deal making, and I don't mean principle compromise, I mean compromise of principle at the end, as senators like Ben Nelson, as I said before, made a deal for their state, a special interest.
He's a disgrace.
I think that's exactly what has left a bad taste in Americans about how business is done in Washington. Look, I'm running against the Washington establishment of my party, and I love being a Democrat. But I honestly most believe that if we want to have the mantle of leadership, we have to change the type of the Democratic leaders we have. When the Democratic leadership will accept a Republican who voted 2,000 times with George Bush. Now, I'm not arguing, that you can argue those were good words, but I'm saying, and then say, you helped get us into this mess. Now, why don't you come over here and help get us out? In the Navy, when you see someone run a ship aground, you relieve for cause. That type of deal-making that you saw down there, do I want transparency? Yes. Particularly, if anyone says something, you want to believe in them. That a man or a woman who's in a public office, when they have a position, they say we're going to do this, that it's done. And so when Ireland switches not just a party, but for political survivability, switches to position on the public option or Defense of Marriage Act or card check, look, it isn't just whether you're right or wrong. In my district, when I ran the first time, 55% Republican, 33% Democrat. When I ran a second time, I didn't have to put up a TV ad. I didn't have to put up a radio ad. I'm sorry about that, you guys. But the issue really was, did they trust you? They don't always agree with you. And that is what is most harmful. So do I understand what you're saying? It's why I'm running. It's why I'm in Center County here, and then go to Erie. And tonight when we're done at 10, go from the corner of northeast Pennsylvania to southeast.
And Congressman,
we need a new type of leader down there.
And I do, you've proven yourself over and over again. You go to the town halls, you take heat, you give it back, you experience. So I get that. If people don't vote for you, it's not because they don't know everything about you, because you put it out there. However, this is your question, and this is what you have to deal with. Do you tell people, we will not do health care because we won't cut any deals? Harry Reid does not get health care done if he doesn't cut deals. You know that. He doesn't get Louisiana. He doesn't get Nebraska. So is it worth it to your party not to get it through and look like a failure, as opposed to get it through and look like you're a dealer in Las Vegas?
Fair question, but remember what I said. I'm about principled compromise, not compromise the principle. Look, let me give you one example. Our inspector this summer, and even in September, is going around saying to people who believe in single payer or others, all the options are on the table. Wait, dust is on the table. Why aren't you out there shaping that bill? If I had been in the Senate, I would have been out there, and you can agree or disagree with someone like Ted Kennedy, and I agree with him, but he was out there trying to shape things early on, not waiting for a deal at the end. Too many people in the Senate waited to the very, very end to try to get what's best. And so the Majority Leader Reid needs to lead by shaping things at the beginning and shape them. So it needs a different approach in the Senate.
Will you vote for the legislation in the House if it's the same piece that passed the Senate that relieves Nebraskans of the obligation that Pennsylvanians and other Americans have to pay?
No, I'm going to have a very difficult time voting, even if just some of the changes are made. Now, that one, if that's the only thing that's left in the bill, I would vote for it. If that was the only thing left in the bill, everything else in it I loved, I'm going to be right up front about that. I'm not going to damage all Pennsylvanians, just because of that piece. And then when I get to the Senate, I'm going to affect a change to it somehow, or try to. But no, here's the issue. What's wrong with the Senate bill? We are already engaged in this. Let me just give you one example, the damage that the lack of transparency has done.
Real quick, we're up against the break.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Do you know that excise tax they have is going to bring in 1/3 by 2019 of all middle-class Americans in employer-based care?
Of course.
And you know it discriminates against employers hiring families, people who are families and not individuals. We've got to fix that, Bill. So are we going to fix it? We're going to be out there doing our most. And at the end of the day, but I won't compromise for some deal. I'll compromise on a principle, and that's where we go. I mean, who do we have there? Where's the Sam Nuns of the past that actually people believed in, and you may not agree with what they said, but they believed that they would do things that were right.
And by the way, the president yesterday backed the Senate version of the bill, not your House version. Thanks so much, Congressman Joe Sestak, doing the hard work to make sure he's the new senator from Pennsylvania. Thanks.
Thank you for joining us, Congressman Sestak. Happy New Year to you.